Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda. I have my pen out because I've been taking notes. We are about to do a deep dive into a series that I just read and loved. So there are a few things that I want to talk about in this series. I'm not going to go through and give spoilers, although in general, we are talking about a romance series where there are 5 siblings and each sibling is in their own book. They get their own book and their own story, and they all have happily ever after endings because that's what this romance means. Okay? So, in general, there won't be spoilers about anything that is a reveal during the book, but anything that you can read in the synopsis of the books, I will be talking about. And also, random things that I noticed that I don't think are spoilery. I just want to know if you noticed, if you've read these books. And also, I noticed because I read them like back to back to back. So let's just jump in. Let's talk about this family first. Okay, we're going to start with Southern Seducer. This is the first book. And this book centers around Beau and Annabelle, or Beau and Belle, as they call each other. Beau's last name is Beauregard. His first name, I don't know. I'm guessing it's the same as his dad's, John Jr. or something. I just made up John. I don't know either. But anyway, their last name is Beauregard. His name is Beau. Here's what I want to talk about. There are 5 children in this family. 4 of them are boys. Here they are. Beau, Samuel, Hank, and Rhett. Oldest to youngest. But in between Hank and Rhett, we have Millie, the girl. The books are not written that way. The books are written all 4 boys and then Millie. Even though Millie's not the baby, Rhett is the baby. Okay. Their dad was a professional football player. We never find out what position their dad played. However, he did have traumatic brain injuries because of all of the concussions that he got. And so he had the brain disease that a lot of professional athletes get. So if you cannot handle that or don't want to read a book about that, you're not going to want to start this series. Their dad had that, and their dad has passed away. Now, here is the first inconsistency that we get. We find out in this book that Beau was 19 years old when his father passed away. And right now, when his book begins, he's 35 years old. So that's been 16 years since that happened. Now, later on in one of the other books, we find out that one of the boys says he's 33 years old, but that he was 13 when his dad died, which means he should have been 6 years younger than Beau. But if Beau is 35, and by this book, Beau would be 37, but then his brother being 33 means that there's only 4 years difference, not 6. Mistake number 1 that I caught, which doesn't really matter, except they do just keep saying, like, I was this old when my dad died, and now I'm this old, and I was this old. So anyway, it just jumped out at me. Second thing, let's talk about with these boys. Beau played outside linebacker. I will explain that in a minute. Samuel was the quarterback. Hank was a running back, and Rhett, who is the only one still playing in the NFL right now, is a wide receiver. Now, at one point in their book, in Rhett's book, they do say something about how many rushing yards he has. And yes, wide receivers can get rushing yards, but that's not primarily what they do. So it was a little weird. I think that she forgot that he was a wide receiver and she kind of made him a running back for a hot second, but he's not. Anyway, the quarterback, the running back, and the wide receiver are all offensive players. So if you know nothing about football and you don't care, just skip. I'm sorry. I have to say this. I feel like no matter who you are, if you've ever seen an American football game, you know who the quarterback is. Okay, so I'm not even talking about that. However, when they all line up and the quarterback sometimes passes the ball, if he's passing it, it's to a wide receiver. Don't come at me. Sometimes it's to a tight end, and sometimes it's also to the running back or maybe even a fullback. We're not talking about that. The people who line up on the ends and run down the field to catch the ball, those are wide receivers, okay? The people who stand in the back and they run the ball, they're the running backs. Okay, we got this? So if the quarterback's standing there and there's a person behind them, when there's only one person, when there's 2 people, it gets a little bit more confusing because that's another position in there, which we're not going to go into today. The running back stands behind the quarterback, he gets the ball, and he runs with the ball. That's it. Sometimes the running back is a receiver, but don't get confused, okay? Running back stands back, runs the ball. Now let's talk about outside linebackers. Again, if you've ever seen a football field, right, you have, I'm going to do this on my hand, okay? You have the line right here. We're on defense now. So the other team has a quarterback with the ball. We don't care about them. Our defensive line are the ones lined up on the line. Listen, it was not a super creative person who came up with the names for all the positions in football. So if you just think about what they do, that sometimes tells you if their position will sometimes tell you what they do. So the defensive linemen are on the line. And then we have our linebackers. You know what they do? They back up the line, right? That's so easy. And then we have the defensive backs that are even further back. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the linebackers. Now, there are different positions for linebackers, but what we want to focus on is middle linebacker. I feel like that's self-explanatory, right? That's the middle one. When there's three there, the middle linebacker is in the middle. And guess what the two outside ones are called? You're right, outside linebackers. There you go. Our Bo in the first book was an outside linebacker. Now, also, second, if you know a lot of things, or if you know anything about football, there are the people that make a lot of tackles, right? That's almost always our linebackers. Linebackers are the tackling people. So they're the ones jumping and hitting and, they're diving after people who are running really fast a lot of the time. So Bo has just been diagnosed with something based on him playing football. And he is very, very worried about it. In the middle of all this, his best friend Annabelle best friends for years and years, by the way, has gone through a divorce a couple of years ago. And then she's decided, I'm going to have a baby. I'm ready to have a baby. Even though she doesn't have a father for her baby, she's decided to have a baby. So she went through the process. She was artificially inseminated. She has a baby girl named Maisie, who is adorable. However, our Annabelle, I'm sorry that they're mowing right now. Our Annabelle has postpartum depression. Now, if you have ever had a child, you understand that certain things happen. Even if you don't get diagnosed with PPD, and even if you're not like, I was never depressed, right? Like, even if that's your story, there are definitely hormonal things happening no matter what. And it just takes a while for people to feel like themselves again. So Annabelle is having postpartum depression, and she needs to get away before she has to go back to work. And her friend Bo says, hey, come up here to the resort, spend a weekend at the resort, bring your mom so she can help you with Maisie, and you and your mom can just have a relaxing time at the resort. She hasn't been able to see the resort because Bo has kind of been secretly waiting until everything was perfect, and he feels like he waited too long, and now things are going on with him, and Belle has a new baby, and he feels like maybe he can't fit into her life anymore the way he was kind of hoping that he would. So this book is really dealing with two people who have their own mess going on and trying to come to terms with that, and then how they might incorporate another person into their life in the middle of all of their junk. I loved it. Like, this was so much more than just here's a person and here's a person, and they're, for whatever reason, thrown together in these circumstances, and then they fall in love. Like, yes, that is the general premise of a romance novel, but this was so much more than that. This whole series was so much more than that. So that is Bo and Annabelle. Let's move on to Samuel. Samuel and Emma meet when Emma is called by Bo. Bo is the CEO of the company, of the place, the Blue Mountain Resort. He is the CEO. He has been in charge. It was mostly his money that got it going. It is their own family land. The house they grew up in is there. However, because their dad had the brain injury issues, he was not the same father that they all knew him as. So, like, Bo knew him when he was good, like in the good days before the brain injuries started to really affect him. But Bo and Samuel are about the only ones that have a lot of good memories of him. The other kids only kind of knew him when he was volatile and would, like, sometimes be their nice dad and then sometimes be, like, withdrawn or angry or just really a different personality than what they initially knew about. So anyway, the house is there, but nobody lives in it right now, the house they grew up in. So Samuel loves food and cooking. And also, Samuel was the quarterback, and he's the tallest one in the family. I don't think that really matters, but also what I don't love is that Rhett was one of the wide receivers. I'm going back on another football tangent. I'm so sorry. Clearly, I need a football channel, I guess. Anyway, Rhett is one of the wide receivers, and he's also considered to be the short one. Like, he's not even 6 foot tall. And I just feel like there's not a lot of short receivers. There are some, but not a lot. Anyway, that does not matter at all, except I was just like, oh, the quarterback is the tallest one. Like, I get the quarterbacks generally need to be tall, but quarterbacks can be successful whether or not they are tall. And generally speaking, wide receivers do better when they're tall. Anyway, really does not matter. Y'all, clearly, I just need football to come back. Is it time yet for football to start? I'm ready for football. Okay. Samuel and Emma meet when she comes there to be the sommelier. I'm not going to say that word again. She's the wine lady, okay? I do not speak French, and that is the extent of my French trying right there. She comes because she knows all about wine. Well, Samuel has been handling the wine just fine, and he thinks that Bo is not happy with the way Samuel has been handling the food and the wine at the resort. And so instead of just confronting his brother and being like, dude, I can handle it. Why are you trying to push me out? He gets mad at Emma, the person who was hired to come there and be the wine person. So anyway, that was a little bit of a really Samuel, because otherwise Samuel is my favorite. And it's not because he's tall. It's because of the way he wants to provide food, and food for him means love for his family. And he always, if somebody has got something going on, he just sends food over to their house. They all live on the resort grounds. If somebody is needing anything, if somebody is like, oh, we're going to have these people out for lunch, Samuel shows up himself to make sure that the restaurant did the food correctly, the drinks correctly, like that everything flows just perfectly. And watching Samuel and Emma, I just really liked it. But Samuel especially, he won my heart with the caring for his family and really wanting to be able to provide for them in just the right way that they like, and I love it. From now on through the whole series, even in Bo's book, all the way through the whole thing, every time there's a family get together, which they have Sunday dinner together every week as a family, Samuel cooks. It's at Samuel's house. He cooks no matter what's happening, and I love it. I love Samuel. He is the best. Anyway, Emma is just showing up there to do a job, and all of a sudden this dude is like very mean to her, and she's going, I don't understand what you're doing. Also, Emma has a side gig, we will say, as an online dominatrix. That's not a word. So Emma just continues to be who she is. She's like, well, I'm going to keep picking wines. I'm going to keep doing what I do here. And then I'm going to keep this thing that I have going on the side where I have a relationship with a man online. And of course, we suspect all along that it is Samuel. And there is a, hey, let's meet face to face. And she says, okay. And then we find out some things. So anyway, so good. Samuel, my absolute favorite. Next in line is Hank. This one started out in Vegas. Hank has decided that he needs to not be in North Carolina for a while. So he left. I'm not really going to say why. Because I feel like you find out things in book 2 about Hank that carry over into book 3. And so all I'll say is Hank has decided he needs to not be in North Carolina. And the opening of this book in Vegas, he walks up to a blackjack table and he meets a woman there named Stevie, who is who I want to be when I grow up. Stevie is absolutely 100% who she is. She knows who she is. She is finally satisfied with who she is, and she has nothing to do with, she does not care what anybody else thinks about it. And I think it's fantastic. She has her own brewery where she makes beer, like different kinds of beer. And Hank gets a phone call. They have a one-night stand, and then they don't see each other. Well, Hank gets a phone call a couple of weeks later that says, hey, I need you to come back to North Carolina for something. We need you to come back home. And Hank is like, oh, I don't want to go back home alone. So he calls up Stevie, and he's like, hey, will you pretend to be my girlfriend for a weekend? And she's like, yes, as long as your family will agree, or you will agree to have your family try my beer to maybe have at your resort. And he says, okay. So business agreement made. They go for the weekend. You know what happens with a fake dating situation. My favorite trope. Also, this book was maybe the funniest out of the three, out of the whole series, honestly. I really liked this one. I really liked Stevie. She might be my favorite of the women of all of these books, but she was fantastic. Anyway, dealing with stuff and talking about it in this book, I thought was done really well in the whole entire series. This is not just person A and person B getting together. There are so many more layers to these characters, and there's so many more layers of things happening. I forgot to mention in Beau's book, we meet the Kingsley boys, who the Kingsleys and the Beauregards have had a feud going on forever, and Beau ends up hitting Nate Kingsley because Nate Kingsley said something about his dad. They got into a fight in Beau's book, so that'll come up later. But anyway, Nate and Stevie fall in love and have to figure out how to make that work because Stevie owns her business in Nashville and Hank is on the mountain. So that is Hank and Stevie. And now we move to the last boy who is still playing football, and that's Rhett. So Rhett finds out that he has a child that he did not know about, and he's got to decide what to do because he is in pre-training to get ready to go to their training camp that they have for the football team. He's playing for a football team in Vegas, and it's not a real team. She's made up a name, but he's playing for a football team in Vegas, and so that's where he lives. That's why Hank was there, because Hank was with Rhett. But Rhett has decided that things have got to change, right? Because now he has a kid, and he needs somebody to take care of the kid. At the same time, Amelia, who was his high school sweetheart, loses her job as a teacher, as an elementary kindergarten teacher, or a preschool teacher. I can't even remember at this point. I think she was a preschool teacher. And so she agrees to work for Rhett as his nanny. We know it's going to happen. But here's the part that I really liked. So, yes, they were high school sweethearts, but we didn't have the traditional, like, second chance romance situation. The reason they broke up at the beginning, I feel like, was a super mature reason for high school seniors to actually have a conversation about it and be like, we want different things, and we're just going to break up. Not necessarily like, oh my gosh, you cheated on me, you ran off, you left, you never showed up again. Like those kind of things I feel like happen a lot. And then we see them as adults and they're like, I've changed a lot. Here's who I am, So anyway, I just thought that part was also unique, that it was a different kind of we broke up in high school situation. And so things are happening in her life where her life is exploding, imploding, whatever. And then things are happening with him where things are certainly changing. And we get to meet his little boy who is named Liam and adorable. And at this point, Beau from book 1 with Annabelle and her baby Maisie. Maisie is now 2 years old. So they're the same age, her and little Liam. It is adorable. Like all of these books flow so well together. And except for the one like age discrepancy, and then also the what position does Rhett actually play, he's a wide receiver. Like you said that at the beginning. You can't then go back and decide that he's a running back. That's not a thing we're doing. They're 2 different positions. Okay, sorry. I'm not going to talk about football again, I promise. Then we just get to find out what happens. He lives in Vegas part-time and he lives in North Carolina part-time with his family. And so he's got to decide what is he going to do? Like, what is his life going to look like? Is he going to go to the resort and stop playing football? Is he going to continue to play football and just move his son with him to Nevada and then back? So we'll just have to find out. I mean, you'll just have to find out. I already know. But that brings us to the last book. Southern Bombshell is Millie's book. And part of me wants to be like, meh, because Millie is the opposite of me or what I like in any kind of way. So I never really connected with her. And like I said with Samuel, the reason that I love him is the way he wanted to always do the best for his family, like make the best food and the best drinks and just figure out the perfect thing. Well, Millie is the perfect decorator. And I guess we're going to say, like, she knows how to pick the aesthetics for the person or for the event or whatever. So anytime any of her brothers have gotten married, she is the wedding planner at the resort. So people sign up months and years in advance to get to do their wedding at the resort. And so that's what she does. Her whole team revolves around planning events, specifically weddings that happen at the resort. We meet her at the beginning of this book when she is planning her ex's wedding, which is just as awkward and uncomfortable as it sounds like it would be. I was like, oh, I did not even want to read that whole scene. Was just like, I was backing up, trying to be like, don't go there. Don't do that. Here's what happened. She's very famous because she has a resort that's been in magazines. She's the wedding planner for the resort. So people want Millie Beauregard to plan their wedding. Well, that's what this woman wants. And her fiance, Nate, says, hey, I had a thing with Millie Beauregard a couple of years ago. And she's like, that's fine. That was a couple of years ago. And I'm sure things are fine. So then I start getting worried because I'm like, listen, if Millie and Nate are the main two characters of this book, I need Nate and Millie to not hook up while Nate is engaged. How is this going to work? And it's fine. I was fine. I was so worried that there was going to be cheating involved, which I hate. And so I was like, I don't want to do that. But anyway, it worked out the way it was supposed to work out. The way she had written it was a wonderful way. I feel like there was more personal stuff with Nate in this one than there was in Millie. Like, we've seen Millie the whole time. And this book was really more of her just being like, I've gotten lost about who I am in all of the things that I've been doing for the resort and for other people. And I need to figure out who I am and hold on to things instead of just skating through life. And Nate, on the other hand, was like, I know who I am or who I want to be, but I can't break free from the history of my family that has been dragging me down. And so Nate is trying to fight against that. And he also has a little brother that he feels responsible for. And his dad is an absolute animal. He's so gross. And so his dad is doing all kinds of things in the background, and it just is all messed up. And all of that to say, that's it. This book ends and the whole series is done, I guess. Yes, as you can see over here to the side, 5 books and that's it. There's books 1 through 3 and then there's books 1 through 5 in like a bind up. But 5 books, that's it. So this series is done and was so good. It looks like there is a related series called Charleston Heat, which has 4 things in it. There's a couple of related series, I guess, it looks like, by her. So I clearly need to jump on the Jessica Peterson bandwagon because I have only read these 5 books from her and I devoured them in a 24-hour period. I read, well, it was like a 48-hour period, but probably reading for at least 25 or 26 hours. I read all of these books and they were so good. Again, they were not just your normal romances. They all had something extra. They are on the spicy side. They're not what I would consider erotica by any stretch, but they are definitely on the smuttier side. So if that isn't something that you're okay with, I highly recommend this series. So good. Also, let me know anytime you want to talk about football because apparently I'm ready to go. Seriously though, if you don't know anything about football and you want to know things about football, let's chat about it because I would love to tell you things. Also, if you like playing video games and you want to learn about football, go pick up an old copy of Madden. It doesn't have to be a new one, like, 2K14 maybe. If that'll still play in your device, I don't know. But anyway, if you go and play that game, you have to see what all the positions are because you're hiring players to work to be in those positions. So that's how I learned. That's how I learned what all the plays were. So when somebody's like, oh, that's a play action, like I know what that means now, but I didn't before I started playing Madden. So that's it. I'm going to let y'all go. I'm going to stop talking about football and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.